Hi, my name is Delinda Bryant, and I am doing this presentation to discuss the phases of disaster workers and and the needs of challenges. What I decided to do is, like the video, is I used a current disaster, which was the Texas freeze February 2021, just to use that particular disaster as an. So during this presentation, like I said, we're going to go through three key phrases of disaster response. My last chapter, I'm sorry, my last slide, I did add the reconstruction phase, which was not explicitly discussed in the video, but I just decided to just add a little bit about that one. But when we talk about the heroic phase, which is the first phase, we'll talk about the needs and the challenges and interventions. For the honeymoon phase, we'll talk about, excuse me, the integration of the clinical and spiritual support, how putting those two together is beneficial. And then we'll also discuss the disillusionment phase. And again, lastly, we'll talk about the reconstruction phase. So, again, in the heroic phase, this is usually when, slightly before, depending on the disaster, when all the workers are getting together, they're collaborating, they're energized, they're preparing for whatever disaster is going to occur. Again, I used the Texas freeze of February 2021, and I recall, on the news, and I also saw with my church, they were getting their facilities ready to create warming centers. They were also requesting the members of the church provide non-perishable foods and water and things in preparation for what would occur after the storm. So during that time, everybody's motivated, everybody's collaborating, there's a community cohesion, there's a lot going on, but everything's on the upbeat. No one's thinking about what the potential impact of the storm. No one's considering how this will affect them in the long run. Basically, everybody's preparing and ramping up. Um, to support. And one other thing I want to make note about this is, the community was, there was also the electrical company. They were out cutting branches away from the electric lines, trying to prepare for this storm. So that's the heroic stage. So there are needs and challenges in the heroic stage for disaster workers. So you have to consider disaster workers, they're leaving their homes. In some cases, they're leaving their homes that have been affected by the disaster. They're leaving their families who probably would need support for them. And so the needs of the disaster workers is they need to make sure that they have the emotional support that they need and the physical support that they need. During storms or trying to prepare, they could hurt themselves or they're stressed or guilt related. So we want to make sure that these disaster workers have what they need. We want to make sure that they are physically able to attend to this disaster. That means they need to make sure that they have the food that they need, they have the rest, and they need to stay hydrated. And then, most importantly, is they need to make sure that they understand that there's communication and resources, and they understand where to go for these resources. So those are the needs. Some of the challenges are, they're preparing for the disaster for their personal lives, and then they're out trying to work as disaster responders. And so there's a lot of stress related to that. They may be exhausted, get burnout. If this this situation is not planned accordingly, there's a lot of stress related to that. So, and then that stress can lead to, other things, physical ailment, mental ailment. And so, in the heroic phase, these are some things that can occur. So, the next phase is called the honeymoon phase. And during the honeymoon phase, this is where you feel a sense of accomplishments, where you feel like you've won. We fed the community. You see the community coming together. You see how all the support of the different government agencies. You see how, well, in the case of the freeze, there were thousands of individuals without lights, but after a while, you notice that the percentage of individuals that where the lights had been turned on was drastically going up. So you started feeling this sense of accomplishment, but then quickly that crashes. It comes to a crashing point because yes, you've seen that the light some of the lights are coming on, but some individuals are suffering the impact of the damages to their homes. Some have had insurance, this financial impact, this emotional toil on what you've lost during the storm. Some individuals have lost individuals. There's just you start to realize, oh my gosh, what are we doing? How are we doing it? So there is like this crash point. And so as a result of this crash point, it creates this emotional impact. You feel exhausted because you're tired. You've been dealing with this for so long. Your stress is elevated. You start questioning God, like, God, why did you let this happen? How am I going to do this? And I myself have felt this way. And then that's the reason why you, as a first responder, you have to, quickly monitor those individuals in mental health and their physical health as well as yours. So the last phase that was discussed in the video was the disillusionment phase. This is where you realize, okay, this freeze occurred, and as a result of this freeze, you realize there's some long-term effects. There's a long-term effects to the infrastructure with the electricity, like, oh my gosh, the government had to come together to figure that out, and then individuals were angry and frustrated, just because maybe they lost someone, maybe there's financial loss, or the stress of this freeze. When you know that another freeze is coming, there may be stress. So you could be at risk for mental health conditions as a result of this long-standing disillusionment phase where you feel like this has been going on forever. And so as a first responder, you could feel that way as well. And so sometimes when I'm looking at these phases, I'm looking at it from a first responder's point of view, and I'm also looking at it from a victim's point of view. So during the disillusionment phase, some of the things that could occur as a result of this emotional impact is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Like I said, if a freeze comes, anytime a freeze comes, you feel some kind of impact. Anxiety disorder, depression, from a result of the impact of the storm, whatever that impact could be. It could be death, financial, it could be anything. Um, you may create use an unhealthy coping mechanism of substance abuse as a result of this disorder. Or you may have a reoccurring mental health illness, or exacerbate the mental illness that you were exhibiting prior to this storm. And so these are some things that could occur, which would require some intervention. And so during the disillusionment phase, some of the interventions that can be used, and again, this is just some of the therapeutic interventions. These are the ones that I'm familiar with personally or as a result from training from school. But I will say that any type of therapy should be empirically researched and supported. The two that I thought for trauma was cognitive behavioral therapy. This is something that I have gone through, and I found that it has been very effective. Um, it does help you restructure. I call it thinking, but it restructure your negative thoughts. I also like the thought of group therapy because group therapy, you have individuals that are going through the same thing, so you don't feel so alone. You can help practice the coping mechanisms. You can hear from your peers about some of the things that they're doing. So you just feel, collaboration and cohesion in a group environment as well. And then, as I stated earlier, some individuals that lean on their faith, they may feel, that God has left them or they're all alone. And scripture and prayer and meditation and fasting, if that's a part of their faith, these things can help build resilience, and these can be parts of coping mechanisms. The other thing I thought about was all the community organizations, whether it's Food Bank, Red Cross, um, crisis centers, homeless shelters, or communities where they provide education about mental health. These are important because sometimes these community outreach churches, they can reach individuals that just um, that they can reach individuals maybe faster than just a normal mental health environment. So I think these community-based preventions that are available to those who can't afford it is a great opportunity as well. So I talked about the three that were mentioned in the video. I think it's important to note that all of them have distinct needs and challenges depending on what the one, depending on if you're a crisis responder or victim or both, or if or just where you at in the type of crisis or trauma that has happened. I think the most important thing, which I used to always feel guilty about saying, is ensuring the that I take care of myself, or that the responder takes care of themselves, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're really not in a position to take care of anyone else. And so you want to make sure that you take care of yourself so you can focus on the individual or the client that needs the assistance that's reaching out to you. Um, I think it's important to develop the plan and collaborate with all the different entities and have all that in order and revisit that on a regular basis just to make sure things are key, and then to recognize that long-term recovery does require trauma-informed intervention and community support. So once the storm is over and the lights back on, that's not necessarily where things stop. There should be additional support within the community and the churches to support those individuals that were impacted emotionally, financially, and physically. So this is what was not discussed explicitly, which is the Reconstruction period, and in a sense, this is a period where individuals are rebuilding. They're determining what's needed to rebuild their homes. Even the electric company, they had to go back and look at their electrical infrastructure to figure out what needed to happen to avoid this freeze or the damages or the outages that occurred. And so we just recently had a storm, and the impact was very minimal compared to what happened in 2021. There's emotional impact, so you need to unpack that and seek counseling to make sure that that emotional impact doesn't advance and become debilitating. And you have to focus on the things that that the emotional impact of the PTSD, depression, and things like that. And then you have to use your faith um, to help build resilience and those coping skills. So this is where you're putting all this together to rebuild and gain resilience. As a result of this assignment, I chose these references. The majority of the references in this are from the textbooks, the videos that were provided by the instructor, as well as a couple of journals from the database library. Again, thank you. My name is Delinda Bryant.